Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to give you a moment to get settled in the Zoom before we kick off. On behalf of the Executives Club, we're so excited to welcome you for our second installment of Mega Developments in Chicago. This series brought to you by our Real Estate Forum, sponsored by JLL. Today, we'll be talking about One Central with Bob Dunn and Christian Baudouin. So without any further ado, I am going to kick things over to Meredith to start off our conversation.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Real Estate Forum event, Mega Development Series, The Future of One Central. I'm Meredith O'Connor, International Director at JLL and Chairman of the Executives Club Real Estate Forum. I'm excited to welcome you to this discussion focusing on One Central, an innovative public-private partnership between Landmark Development and the state of Illinois that has been designed to unlock massive economic development potential in Chicago. This is the second installment of our Mega Development series, and we hope you will continue to tune in with us over the course of the next few months, where we're going to feature many more sites. So we hope that you can keep your video on during this event. If you'd like a more focused view, please put your Zoom in speaker mode, which is located at the top right-hand corner of your screen. So today I'm thrilled to feature my colleague, Christian Baudouin, who's a managing director at JLL. He's going to serve as today's moderator. He will be the moderator. He will be leading the discussion in the conversation with Bob Dunn, who's my friend, and also the president of Landmark Development Services. So Bob will begin today's presentation about One Central, followed by a discussion with Christian. We will have time for the audience to ask questions at the end of the program, and we encourage you to send those questions via host in the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. So thanks again for all of you joining us today, and we'd like to, in taking time out of your busy schedule, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Meredith. Appreciate the opportunity, and good afternoon to the group. As Meredith said, we're going to give you a quick overview of the background on One Central, really how the framework of One Central came together with the state of Illinois, kind of the vision for the project, and then with Christian, be happy to answer any questions. So as with any major project, the beginning of the vision starts with the site. The site that you see here is roughly 34 acres of land and air rights set along Lakeshore Drive. So we have nearly 3,000 feet of frontage along Lakeshore Drive. The southern end of the property is McCormick Place. To the west is the existing Central Station neighborhood, and to the north is McFetridge Avenue. The site was originally part of what was the 85-acre Central Station master plan. Central Station, as many of you know, was envisioned by Jerry Fogelson, a lifelong Chicago real estate developer, and Albert Ratner at Forest City. Jerry and Albert came together in late 1980s, acquired all the land that we now control, as well as roughly 50 acres to the west of the One Central site, master planned, gained approval, and really began the transformation of the South Loop neighborhood. About 5 years ago, Jerry approached us at Landmark and was looking for someone to step in and lead the last stage of development, which is the 35 acres that you see on the site in front of you. Go back, if you would, Elizabeth, just for a minute. A couple other points of importance with the site. Obviously, the Metra rail yard is what you see in the center of the site. The Metra yard operation and track today covers about 50–60% of the site area, and it's really the impediment that's prevented development on this site for many years. I mean, if you looked at it from a pure real estate perspective and removed all that track infrastructure and the white that you see there, which is known as the Weldon Yard. The Weldon Yard was built 100 years ago as a temporary maintenance facility, and of course, it remains on site today. If you imagine for a minute, if all that track infrastructure and that building were gone, what would sit on this site today? You'd have millions of square feet, dense, concentrated urban development, and it's the presence of Metra's yard and track that has prevented the site from being developed. And that was the origin of my discussions with Jerry Fogelson and Albert Ratner, was not just how to build the infrastructure that would make the site developable, but how to finance that, given the size and scale of the infrastructure that's required to keep Metra in place, keep them operational, and create a podium, if you will, that makes the site developable. So that's a little bit of the background on One Central. Its origins really were baked in the original Central Station master plan that was first put together by Fogelson and Forest City back in the late 1980s. Next slide. Is there a bit of a delay, or is that just on my end?
You guys see the slide?
Yeah, it's still the same slide. There you go.
I'm still on the photo.
You see it, Bob?
So this
Yeah.
gives you a sense, yes, in plan. What's inside the red line is the 35 acres of land and air rights that we control. What you see in blue are all the buildings that were built as part of the original Central Station master plan. Again, to give you further context of the site, Lakeshore Drive to the bottom, 18th Street is probably the most recognized point of reference on the site, the 18th Street interchange that's just south of Soldier Field, just north of McCormick Place. McCormick Place to the left, Soldier Field to the bottom of the page. So the master plan for One Central, step ahead if you would, Lizzie. The master plan, as I said, was created in 1989. There was a TIF financing that was put in place that built the infrastructure that opened up the South Loop neighborhood for development. You know, there's something roughly north of 6,000 residential units that have been built in the neighborhood since the early 90s. And when we think about One Central, all the planning work that we've done, JLL has been our partner in putting the master plan together and evaluating the market. 4 distinct factors that I would argue make the One Central site and opportunity unique. Number 1 is transit. There's an interesting history that exists with this site with respect to transit. 100 years ago, 50 years ago, of transit in the central United States, all track infrastructure in the central US really came into downtown Chicago. This is a photo of the site going back nearly 100 years. The lakefront of Chicago is very different than it is today. It was a marshaling yard. The old Illinois Central Rail Station used to sit on this site. And in its day, it was the #1 station in the world measured by daily boardings. So there's an incredible track infrastructure that existed that far back in time. Much of that infrastructure remains in place today. And it's really the first defining element of the opportunity at One Central is to create a transit connection, a transit hub, unlike any transit hub we have in Chicago or really in the US, where we can link together all forms of mass transit. Obviously, Metro runs through the site. We have the ability to make a CTA connection to the site, running elevated track about 2.5 city blocks from the west, bringing together Metro and CTA. Amtrak happens to run by the site today. And then we have a service line that we call the Shy Line, which is an opportunity to create a central area circulator, much like what was talked about in Chicago many years ago, that would link this transit hub along the lakefront and really connecting all of the institutions that make up the cultural mile. It's the orange dashed line that you see on the page here. So the transit opportunity is really the first thing that stood out to us that makes this site unique in many respects. And every mega project that you talk about in Chicago, this factor site's unique for development. At One Central, it happens to start with transit. The second factor that we would point to that's a defining element of this site and this opportunity is the civic importance of the site. You know, we bring 50 million people a year into the lakefront of the city of Chicago. The parks, the stadium, McCormick Place, the museum campus, Navy Pier. It's an incredible concentration of visitors that come into the city, not well served by transit, and lacking many of the amenities that this type of urban entertainment district all over the country, all over the world have become known for. And that's part of the opportunity that we have with One Central, is to fill the hole in the donut, if you will, to create the kind of urban amenities that an entertainment district of this size and scale would be expected to have. As I say oftentimes, Disney wouldn't do it this way. Disney wouldn't create this many anchors, this kind of a draw, and not provide the transportation and the amenity set that tourists, that consumers would expect. And that's the second pillar, as we refer to it, of One Central: transit and the ability to create an urban place that really unifies the whole cultural mile experience on the front in the heart of downtown Chicago. And that's really a function of the uniqueness of the location. The third factor that we speak about really relates to what this project can do, really to become a gateway to the South Side. Really in all respects, all of the mega projects that are planned, that are being developed, can have a very positive impact on neighborhoods that have been in distress for a generation or more. This project, we believe, is very well positioned and uniquely positioned to create equity and economic opportunity for residents of the South Side. I think there will be a discussion with Corinne later on where we'll speak to this in a bit more detail, how a project like this really can become a catalyst to help drive transformation for neighborhoods and parts of the city that have been in and continue to be stressed if there's not private investment that can help reverse the trends that have so severe impact these neighborhoods for many years. And I think one of the things that really stands out with One Central as a public-private partnership is the fiscal impact that it generates, and with that, the importance of how that can benefit residents of the South Side. And the fourth point that we speak to in terms of what defines One Central uniquely in the Chicago market is technology. We have a partnership with Johnson Controls. We're looking at where are projects like this advancing in the future, where are cities advancing in the future? Really, what can technology mean? What will technology do to reshape urban landscape in this country? One of the advantages that we have at One Central is we happen to sit on top of some of the highest fiber capacity lines that run through the central US. And that's not the only factor that drives our technology plan. Part of what's unique with One Central is the ability to bring together a place, a master plan development, a transit-oriented development that happens to connect with tens of millions of people. 50 million people that come to the lakefront. We see in excess of 50 million cars come by the site on an annual basis on Lakeshore Drive. The transit hub that we're building could move as many as 40 million people through the site on an annual basis in the future. There are very few places in America where you have that kind of movement of people married up with the fiber backbone we have at this site. And so that opens up a whole new world of opportunity to use digital data and technology to create an entirely new urban landscape, which really is what will define our cities in years to come. And I think now more than ever, we've all gained a respect, in the world of pandemic, of what technology is going to mean in our daily lives. And we're very well positioned to take advantage of not just the technology, but also the intersection of so many people that come to the site, through the site, and by the site on an annual basis. And the last point that I'll touch on, in terms of the uniqueness of the site, is what this means in terms of economic development and how we frame the public-private partnership that we established with the state 2 years ago in the spring legislative session. What One Central gives us the ability to do is to leverage these four pillars to create what we call the civic build. The civic build is really the defining infrastructure element of the One Central project. What we presented to the state was a unique opportunity to privately build, finance, operate, and maintain a nearly $4 billion infrastructure asset on this site. And when you think about what that infrastructure is, it includes all the improvements, roadway improvements, the infrastructure that's necessary to support this type of development. Infrastructure meaning sewer, water, sort of the civil infrastructure, parking, and then a set of amenities that really will play to all of the surrounding civic and cultural institutions that I mentioned as part of the civic presence of this site. So when we began our planning, as I said earlier, we recognized that not only did we have to find a way to structurally keep Metro and create a podium, if you will, up and over the site, but to do it in a way that it can support the event vertical on site. And to do that is a significant undertaking. Structure build opens up opportunity for considerable vertical development follow on behind the civic build. What's shown here is a massing study of roughly 20 million square feet of vertical development. That will include commercial office, residential, hospitality, may include educational elements, and health and wellness. Those are the primary components of the mixed use plan. The zoning that we've begun to pursue anticipates, as I said, upwards of 20 million square feet of vertical development in time. In all the work that we've done, we've studied the development patterns in the city. I studied development patterns in the region and where we see urban centers around the world going in the future. You can make a very strong argument that this type of dense, concentrated urban development centered on transit, well connected to the core of the loop, immediately proximate to the civic assets that define the city of Chicago, is a very unique opportunity. Beyond that, being able to leverage technology and create a gateway to the south side, all those things are what make the opportunity at One Central unique, unique in Chicago, and I would argue in many respects, we don't see many sites like this in the US today. Most have been built out. If you look back in time on Chicago's history, think of Lakeshore East, think of Streeterville, think of the entire area along the riverfront. Think of Central Station. If you look back over the last 20, 30, 40 years, there have been a series of mega developments throughout the city of Chicago that have really defined what Chicago is today. When you think about infrastructure development, Mayor Daley's plan to build Millennium Park and what that has done to transform and change the city, drive tourism, drive spending, create tax base. This project resembles all of those patterns that have existed in the city of Chicago for generations. It's both an infrastructure, civic asset, as well as a concentrated, dense urban development. The last point is, what does this project mean from a public-private standpoint? We've been involved over the years in a lot of these big economic development initiatives. What really drives this kind of opportunity in every case is, what does this mean from a public investment standpoint? The legislation that we passed primarily on the basis of how this project can uniquely drive tax base to the state, the county, to the city, and related agencies within city and state government, meaning RTA, McCormick Place, Chicago Public Schools, all benefit from the private investment that's being made in One Central. And for us, this was really the starting point. Absent this kind of public-private partnership and investment tool, there's really no way to develop this site. It's why it's sat here for so many years with two very capable developers building 50 acres of real estate immediately to the west. And for years, Albert Ratner and Jerry Fogelson tried to find different ways to develop the site. And the impediment was always lacking a tool to help build the infrastructure that's necessary to open up the vertical development opportunity. And what's unique about this P3 in particular is what you see on the screen here. The 5 elements that drive the fiscal impact at One Central is uncommon. Many of these big infrastructure developments that occur drive considerable fiscal impact, typically in one of these pillars. Sometimes you may see it in 2. What's unique here is One Central drives fiscal impact and growth in tax base, in transit. It helps strengthen the future of all the civic and cultural institutions. It significantly grows property values in the immediate area surrounding the site, the South Loop. The site itself, the vertical development that occurs alone generates a massive growth in tax base. And the 5th pillar being the South Side. These are in no particular order, but the 5th pillar is how this can open up economic opportunity for residents of the South Side, generating jobs, better access to jobs. Jobs create the ability to grow household income. Household income is the dominant factor that's most important to transforming neighborhoods on the South and West Side. So that's kind of background on One Central. What we think makes the project unique. As I said, all the mega projects in Chicago have factors like this. All are important to the history and the future of the city. All will be developed and be developed successfully. And we expect that One Central will be an important part of the city of Chicago in the next generation and beyond.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bob. Again, this is Christian from JLL, and I think we'd like to dig into some of the more, I think some of the details that you had just mentioned, and I would like to get a little bit further into some of the points you highlighted. So just to kick off, you mentioned kind of 4 key defining trends of the project or defining points of the project: transit, amenities, economic development, and then technology and infrastructure that are kind of unique at the project. So I want to go into depth on each of those just to give the audience a little bit of more information on what you really mean there. And for full disclosure, we should mention JLL, as you, I think, referenced, has served as a consultant on this project in the past to help with market studies and feasibility and things. So there's full disclosure there. But let's dig into each one of these. The transit hub that you mentioned. What do you mean when you say transit connectivity at One Central? What do you envision as actually coming in here? Metra, CTA, buses, something called the Shy Line. What's actually coming into this site?
Sure. Well, number one, Metra comes through the site today. Metra electric service, both Metra D. So service lines will remain operational through the site. Interesting enough, both of those service lines run at far lower capacity than they had at times in the past. So there's a very significant opportunity to grow ridership without having to do what you normally do when you're expanding this kind of transit infrastructure, which is you have to build the infrastructure and you have to add trains and staff and what have you. In this case, ridership without incurring the kind of capital and operational cost that would normally come with growing ridership. That's part one.
We might be losing you, Bob. Are you there?
We'll ask him to turn off his camera maybe, and that will help.
I'll shoot him a text on that.
And Bob, I think you're on mute though. He's showing he's on mute.
Well, until we get him back, maybe Lizzie, if you want to pull the graphic back up, I would be happy to quickly talk through the other components that Bob started to outline. And Lizzie,
Sure.
maybe you can keep an eye. I know people would rather hear from Bob than me, but my name is Lynette Crandall, and I've worked closely with the Landmark team on the project development and finance for the past several years. So Bob touched on Metra. The other exciting opportunity, as he alluded to, is not far away is the CTA elevated line. We know it's been part of planning documents for many, many years. An aspirational goal to provide CTA and Metra connectivity. So that's an exciting opportunity here. Again, we've got an existing rail corridor, the St. Charles Airline, and so have been working with CTA for some time to identify an opportunity to bring CTA over for connectivity to Metra. And that's really a dominant factor that drives that ridership growth regionally, and actually increases boardings throughout the entire regional system. So that's a big part of the transit plan that we think is exciting. And as Bob mentioned, has particular South Side benefits. Again, getting people access to jobs within a reasonable 30-minute commute. I think.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's very helpful. Hey, Bob, there you are.
My apologies.
No problem. The next
So I
covered for you
attempted
very
to
well.
cover CTA, so you can take it from there, Bob.
So Christian, Metra CTA, the Shy Line service, as I mentioned, would be a tram-like service that can connect all the civic and cultural institutions. There is potential in time to connect Amtrak service at the site. Amtrak comes by the site today on the CN line. So we just don't have locations like this in the US where you can create that kind of transit connection among all the service providers in a single location, which happens to be where you've got the greatest concentration of visitation coming into the city.
Yeah, no, agreed completely. I have tried to take my 2 young daughters to the museum campus before, and it's clunky. It's just, you may as well drive because it's very hard to get to this area, and it's on public transit. You either have to take a green line or a red line, then walk across, Roosevelt Road and several areas that you just don't want to walk on. So the idea of transit connectivity on the south side, connecting both the city and the loop, and then adding connectivity to the south side seems incredibly powerful. So thanks. I just wanted to clarify that for some of the audience. The next topic you hit on was amenities and the connection that you can bring to this region. Can you talk about the scale of this project? How are you breaking up this massive project into districts or into different regions so people really understand what this civic build really means? Because it's a huge 35-acre site. How are you thinking about dividing this up into different uses?
Well, as you know, you've been at the heart of the analysis that we've done on this. Our company's background is very heavily involved in urban entertainment, big civic and cultural assets, and the type of infill development that comes together in and around this type of destination. What's interesting about Chicago, and Christian, you and your team built this analysis with us, is in many respects, the market is underserved to drastically underserved in terms of the type of retail, dining, entertainment amenities that would be expected in an area that generates this type of visitation. They just don't exist. As you said, you come to the Lakefront District, it's difficult to get there, it's more difficult to get around, and there's really no amenity set, certainly within a walkable distance to any of the main attractions. Think of McCormick Place. The future of McCormick Place in many respects is going to be defined by the urban experience that you feel in and around an important civic asset like that. So in the analysis that's been done with JLL, we identified the opportunity for 4 unique districts, each of which have their own consumer demand, each of which have their own program. One is entertainment linked into McCormick Place. There's some interesting opportunities in terms of how we can build an entertainment program. It's exactly what you would expect in and around the North America's largest convention center, an NFL caliber stadium in a park that generates, large music events and what have you. So entertainment is one major element of the mix. Lifestyle centered around health and wellness is the second component. The third is what we call experiential. We believe that there are a certain set of unique opportunities to create unique one-of-a-kind attractions, sort of themed around the history of Chicago. And the fourth is neighborhood. If there's one thing that really stood out when we started to build this analysis, I think you would agree, Christian, is you've got an incredibly dense urban neighborhood that exists already, underserved by retail. Today, there's 1/4 to 1/5, maybe a third the number of retail, dining, entertainment establishments as you would find in comparable neighborhoods elsewhere around the city. So that's kind of the mix programmatically. This is evolving as we speak. This isn't something that will be built, in a day. But each one of these districts have a unique opportunity to draw a consumer, each one of their own. And then by joining these together, it's an opportunity to create a very unique urban entertainment district that I don't know that I could say it has a comparable here in the U.S.
Thanks a lot. I think that's really helpful. And I wanted to kind of follow up on that one point you just mentioned. This won't be built in a day. So tell us your time frame, because this is a massive project. So in your ideal world, what is the general timing for the civic build completion, and then to start on some of the more vertical construction?
Sure. Well, as with any major project, you have to look at this with a long-term perspective. Look back in time in the city of Chicago. All the mega projects, including Central Station, have been built out over a 15, 20-year period of time. This project is no different than that. We do have about a 4-year infrastructure building phase, which right now is very advantageous to us. When we go on the ground on the infrastructure phase, we're putting 19,000 jobs in place right away. And it gives us the ability to work through the economic cycle that we're in right now while we build infrastructure. I think it's probably something we would all agree on, that America is going to see maybe the greatest infrastructure boom that we've ever seen in this country in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And so we'll be in that cycle. And we believe, based largely on the analysis from JLL, that as we come out of the infrastructure phase, we'll be facing a significant growth period in this country. And so the forecast that we would run based on the work we've done with JLL is beyond the infrastructure phase, it's a 15+ year build out to get to the full 20 million square foot master plan.
Got it. Okay, I think that's very helpful, because my assumption is that some people see some of these initial renderings and say, oh my God, this is crazy. This is a huge amount of space. But when you plan it out over a 10 to 15 to 20 year period, I think it's much more manageable. And it's, as you said, it's kind of in line with the development patterns that we've seen in Chicago, right? The Chicago market absorbs a couple million square feet of office space every year in non-COVID years. And so I think if you just think of that pattern going forward, it's going to need a significant amount of space in the future. So
yeah, I mean, as you know from this graphic, you helped us bake this graphic, but the blue bar at the bottom shows our infrastructure building phase, which happens to dovetail with, the likely downturn that we've seen and will continue to see in our economy. And the green bar represents that 15-year build out. And, it's kind of an interesting reference point that we like to draw. If you look at the River District, Lakeshore East and Streeterville and up through that area, and you look at it in the context of what's there today, we all recognize this. There's just been an incredible amount of development that's occurred in Chicago for, the last generation. If you thought back to what did this area look like in, 1980, 40 years ago, which when you really think of it, the cycle of projects like this, from beginning to end, from inception through full build out, can be 30 years plus. If I asked, what do you think Chicago looked like in 1980 relative to what's there today? Lakeshore East kind of prominently right on the left side of the river here. If you go back in time and look at where Chicago was in 1980, I don't think very many people today would envision that this was Chicago in 1980. And over that period of time, through now 5 turns in the economy, 5 recessionary periods, Chicago has seen a massive amount of growth in the urban core. And we would argue the pace of that over the next 30+ years will pace ahead of what we've seen over the last 30 years.
Agreed. I think that context is really helpful for some people to see, because this is a long-term project, kind of on the order of what you had just shown, right? So this won't all be built in a day or even a decade. There's a lot of time to get this project developed right. And I think when you start with the civic build, with the infrastructure component, the retail component that's so lacking on the south side and the connectivity, then you can build vertical after that, right?
Right.
So let's talk about when you're starting now on the civic build. You mentioned 19,000 jobs. What is your plan for making sure that the community, this particularly the South Loop and the South Side, are integrated into the design and construction, and what programs are you going to implement for hiring and job training to make sure that there's community equity?
Sure. A critically important issue. We spend as much time on this as we do all the other major elements of the project. When we wrote our legislation with the state, we wrote into that legislation a program that we call Southside Works. Southside Works is what we characterize as an economic opportunity program. It goes beyond kind of the typical or the traditional programs that we see centered around construction. We've done a lot of work on this. You've been involved. AECOM has been very involved with us in building this program. And it really touches on three key elements that will be important to really capitalize on what an infrastructure and then a major urban development can mean to communities on the south side. The first part we call community development. That's really aligning people with job opportunities. These programs are great, provided that you can get unemployed, underemployed, those that don't have either the training or education. You can get them aligned with the jobs ahead of when the jobs become available. And that takes a dedicated program and a dedicated effort. That's the first part of Southside Works, is creating the resources that help get people and businesses aligned with the opportunities that a project like this can create. The second part is working with community organizations to build the type of pathways to training and education that is necessary to help people realize the upside from the job opportunities that will come available. And the third part of this program is investment. We've been working over the last year plus on putting all the elements of One Central together. We've tried to stay focused on that. We've tried to stay quiet somewhat. We're to a point now where we're going to come forward and really present all the facts and do it in a way where people can judge the project on its merit. And we think Southside Works will be one of the really important parts of what this project can do for the community. And in that, our community investment program is really designed to redistribute some of the economic gain that can come from a project like this directly into the community. And that can happen a number of ways. Building affordable housing, creating resources to help subsidize transit, creating other opportunities for economic development in and around transit, supporting training and education programs. So we have a very well-organized program, a great team that we've been able to put together, and we're eager to come forward and present Southside Works as a part of One Central. And what's unique with it is when you're building a $4 billion infrastructure project and you have a project of that size and scale, you can do things that you can't do if you're building projects one at a time. It just gives us much more depth and resource we can draw from. I mean, just the job number alone goes way beyond what you would see if you were building a single tower, for instance.
Got it. No, it's very helpful. Thank you for kind of mentioning that, and also for your planning for inclusion with the neighborhood. It's, as you know, it's a critical part of the city's concerns as well. And so I think that'll be a considerable issue going forward. The last pillar you mentioned of the project was technology. And I've got to admit, working with a lot of developers, sometimes when I hear sustainability and technology, I roll my eyes because they all talk about it, but don't exactly all really care about it. What are you really proposing to do in terms of sustainability and technology on this site? Can you tell us some about your partners and your actual programs that you'll be building here?
Sure. It's, I think probably more than any other factor, technology is one of our greatest As I said earlier, it's one of our 4 pillars, but it's also probably the factor that is changing most rapidly. And for years, we've talked about green buildings and sustainability, and a lot of very positive things have happened in those respects. But as we look forward, partly due to COVID, but these trends started long before COVID. The urban place of tomorrow, in many respects, will be defined by technology. And what we think, as I said earlier, is unique about One Central are these kind of 4 pillars, all of which create connectivity, transit, connecting to the south side, creating a center point of the civic and cultural institutions. And it's really technology that takes all that to the next level. As I said earlier, you don't have many places where you intersect this many people in a defined urban place where you have the technology opportunity because of the infrastructure that runs below this site. So how do you deploy that? That's what we're studying. JCI is an interesting partner because what they bring to it is the backbone that all technology runs from. And as we've been building this plan and studying how to use those technologies, what you see on the screen here defines some of that. And I'll go right to left and give you some examples. What we call the built environment and sustainability. Again, a lot of discussion about green buildings and LEED and what have you, and all those things will be important here. But we're also seeing opportunities where we may be able to take our stormwater as an example. And rather than have runoff from the site, there's potential that we may be able to basically evaporate all of that stormwater through a series of technologies that we're studying versus putting that stormwater into pipes and on from there. That's one example of where technology is giving us opportunities to look at different ways to meet sustainability objectives. Mobility. We've got this incredible intersection of transit in the core of the city. We talk a lot about driverless and a lot of other new applications in mobility, but we're just beginning now to understand how will technology play into that. It wasn't that many years ago, none of us had ever heard of Uber. Well, if you think about, as you said, Christian, coming to the lakefront with your family, how can you use technology to move more freely, to shop while you're moving, to intersect with the cultural experience before you arrive at the front door? Those are the types of technologies that we're studying. Safety and security may be one of the most important elements of technology that we're going to see evolve in urban America in the future. Again, I think maybe one of the things we've learned in the past year is just how important safety is going to be in the core of our cities. And technology is absolutely going to play a role in this. We're looking at a whole command center that we can uniquely build at One Central because of all the movement of people, transit, and the civic institutions around the site. And how can we deploy new technologies to create a safer, more secure urban environment? Lifestyle means many things. We've all experienced it in the last year. Whether that means I can reside at my home and my groceries are brought to me, or I have a virtual concierge, I can have my car brought to me. The lifestyle aspects of technology we're only beginning to see. And this area is probably one of those that we see as being most dynamic and most fluid. Healthy buildings, COVID is going to drive this. I think this is going to be an area where in 5 years, when we look back at COVID, one of the real changes we're going to see is how dramatically it is going to alter the built landscape across this country. And digital innovations is really about data, how you can aggregate data, what you can do with that data, and how you can use that data to the benefit of consumers.
Fantastic. It's really helpful. I'm glad you hit on the healthy buildings topic. That's come up in a few questions that I was going to ask you next, but I do think that will be the defining trend in the next 4 or 5 years, really is health and wellness within real estate, and people having a much more conscious effort to focus on that and make sure that buildings are able to keep people healthy and well. And I think we're seeing a lot of that already come into play in the Chicago market. I want to transfer to a couple other questions though that we're seeing in the chat that are really focused on the transit aspect. And since it is such a central focus of the project, I want to drill into it. Part of it is connectivity and pedestrian bridge that's kind of going over. If you could talk about that, Bob, if there's pedestrian linkages from the site over Lakeshore Drive into the museum campus, that's kind of a part of the discussion, but also specific on CTA and how that would interplay with the Roosevelt train station. Can you give us some indications on both of those?
Sure. Well, the first part, think of this like the welcome center to the lakefront and the bridge that connects the city to the lakefront. To do that, we have to have physical connections. And so, yes, there will be bridges that will make their way from One Central over into the park, across Lakeshore Drive and into the park. We've always felt that that's one of the real opportunities, is to fill this void on the lakefront that I would argue is blight in a rail yard today, and create a park-like environment that allows people to really come to the lakefront efficiently with transit and then bridge into the park. So that's a big part of it. Bike, pedestrian, but beyond that, the Shy Line is critically important because what we talked about earlier, getting to the lakefront can be daunting. Think of a Bears game day or a concert in the park or another major event in the city. Those can be very challenging just to get to the lakefront. And then moving throughout the lakefront has a lot of limitations, particularly given the climate that we're in. So to have a mobility system that allows you to move efficiently, economically, and really have a service that takes you door to door. We've all done it, strollers, kids, grandparents, trying to move from attraction to attraction can be a very challenging experience, and all of that can be changed. So that mobility emanates from the transit hub. The key to it, though, is creating the points of intersection that bring all these service lines together in a world-class train station, transit hub, that allows for all those elements of mobility to interconnect. And the other thing that it does, because it's a point of intersection, it creates massive growth in ridership throughout the entire metro area. The estimates in the transit feasibility study are by far, this becomes the most active train station in the Metro Chicago system because it's a hub. It links different service lines together. Maybe the most important statistic there is gives 100,000 residents on the south side access to a job in a 30 to 35 minute commute, whereas today that can be an hour and a half or more twice a day.
Got it. I think it's helpful. When you say a massive project, it sounds to me like you've got a massive effort ahead of you to connect all of these various agencies and bodies, right, that are involved in this. You've got to work with CTA, you've got to work with Metro, you've got to work with the state, you've got to work with the city. And I think just getting all those pieces together is maybe the crux of this project. Is that fair to say?
I can't deny that. It has its own unique set of complications. We've done a lot of work. I can say the transit feasibility study that we've done that we're ready to present publicly very soon. Absolutely, it's using the that used to be something like an overwhelming case in favor of back to the 2050 study, looking at where Chicago needs to grow or go the transit system, growing ridership by as much as 50%. Well, how do you do that? One Central takes a major step in the right direction to meeting that type of objective.
That's great. And Liz is showing on the screen now the Illinois Growth Corridor of connecting One Central to the south side. I think maybe we'll close on this and then turn it back over to Megan and team. I think a real opportunity for this project is connecting the central loop and the central core of Chicago to the south side, which has been so underserved and so underrepresented. Just for context in the audience, north side residents have access to 7 times more office space than south side residents. They have 3 times the access to hotel rooms as south side residents. They have 4.5 times the access to Class A multifamily than there is on the south side. And for retail and dining on the north side, residents have access. So every north side resident has access to 1.5 restaurants, and that's the inverse on the south side. So essentially, if you take those who live north of Roosevelt Road, for every 564 residents, there's restaurants, there's retail, there's entertainment. On the south side, that triples to 1,500 residents, right? It's a real disparity in terms of what's available. So when you show up here, the Illinois Growth Corridor, how are you connecting One Central to the south side? What is actually part of your project, and what is proposed for the South Side Works program here?
Well, you see the label identifying One Central. That's obviously the site. And what you see in blue and red are what exists today. The blue lines are the Metro Electric service lines, and the NICD lines running south right through the heart of the south side of Chicago. What you see in red are the existing CTA routes that come south through the city and extend on down through these neighborhoods. What One Central does, if you see that short red stem that extends from the west, the bottom up to the One Central emblem, that's where we propose to extend CTA service elevated along the CN right-of-way in an existing rail right-of-way to make this connection to One Central and link CTA to Metra. By doing that, you create a point of connection. At that point of connection, you also have the ability to access the Shine Line that serves the entire lakefront district. So by making that connection, in particular of Metra to CTA, that is what opens up opportunity really 2 ways. One, for residents of the south side to gain access to jobs throughout the metro area. Like you said, Christian, someone coming from the north has immediate access to jobs as they come into the city. Coming from the south, that's not the case. We've all heard stories and read stories of a person that walks 12 blocks, gets a bus, makes a transfer, gets a train, takes another bus, walks 2 city blocks. That type of thing on the south side is not at all uncommon. And this is a major step toward changing all of that, bringing people efficiently into the city. Now, those blue lines, as I said earlier, those blue lines have excess capacity today of something in the neighborhood of 50%. So there's no capacity here whatsoever. If you can put more people on trains, that's efficient in the transit system. So it's really the Metra to CTA connection that has the ability to significantly grow ridership from the south side to the rest of the city. And the same holds true in reverse. You know better than anyone, if you're going to bring jobs to the south side, think of all those metro-wide residents who would have to get to those jobs. Well, absent this transit infrastructure, getting from the west side, the southwest side, the north side to employment on the south side is very limited until this transit hub connection can be made. It really works both ways, giving south side residents access to jobs throughout the metro area and giving the city the ability to drive new employment to the south side by opening up access to all the dark emblems that you see on this map are really there to designate many of the areas where growth could occur if the transportation infrastructure gives metro-wide employees the ability to get to jobs on the south side.
Thanks a lot. No, it's very helpful to see this image, which kind of works its way south. Many maps are too focused further north, I think, in a lot of developments. But last question I'll ask, you are not alone in planning a very large project in Chicago, right? So you've got One Central with many others, even just in your vicinity, you've got the 78 proposed, and we've got the Michael Reese site proposed by Farpoint, just a bit to the south of you. It looks like you're even showing here some connectivity to those sites through transit. But how are you planning to work with those, projects? What are the differentiators that you think really are bringing people to One Central, and how can you help all those projects work together? Because I think there is adequate demand for all of them if they have their own unique features.
Well, I'll take your last point first. And I base a lot of work that we've done together. You've demonstrated with us, I think, a very clear way that Chicago's future is dependent on all of these projects, not any one over another. Chicago's future is dependent on all of these projects. Just like the photo that you saw from 1980 to today, there've been something like 5, 6, 7 mega projects developed in the city of Chicago in that time frame. So all of these projects, and I think, Christian, we would argue together, if you look at the past and you run a forecast to the future, even adjusting for COVID, there's not enough land in development in the city of Chicago to meet the future demand. More land is going to be developed than all of the mega projects can support that are known today. And that pattern is absolutely true looking back over the last 40 years. As far as how can these projects work together, we've been very focused over the last year plus in really building up all the analysis. You've been intimately involved in all of it to support the case for One Central, fiscal impact, market demand, impact to the South Side. We've been very focused on building up the case to support the vision that we have for One Central. We're at a point now, though, where I think, to answer your question, we see a great opportunity for these projects to come together and collaborate. I happen to believe, and we just saw an initial study come back on this, we think there's a very unique opportunity to create another extension to the Shy Line that could connect One Central, Michael Reese, down to the South Side, to the university, the Presidential Center, Science and Industry, and also go west and north, picking up the 78 and on to Union Station. To the extent that we could create that kind of a Shy Line extension and connect it to the Shy Line along the lakefront, you've effectively created the circulator concept that was studied in Chicago many years ago, or you've nearly completed that full loop. What that would do to strengthen the urban core of Chicago, the ridership numbers I saw in this latest study, all additive to the growth in ridership that the transit hub will create, will have a massive positive impact on all parts of the city. So I think transit is probably the area where we have the greatest opportunity to collaborate, but there will be more. It might be technology. It might be how we can work together to strengthen opportunities for the South Side by working in a more coordinated manner. So I think there's always competition between projects, but I think we're at a point now where we all need to start to begin to focus on how can we strengthen Chicago's future and work together to do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's an incredible opportunity right now for all these projects to work together. When you think about some of their differentiating features, with the 78 bringing Discovery Partners Institute, you've got Michael Reese campus bringing a healthcare campus and focus on health and wellness. And then you're really bringing transit connectivity to the entire city and to the South Side, plus amenities and plus conveniences for everyone to get together. I think there's real potential for the South Side of Chicago and for the city in general. So I just wanted to thank you, Bob, for your time and taking the time to explain everything about this project. It's a complicated, massive endeavor, and just wanted to thank you for explaining it. And hopefully it was helpful to the audience. Megan, I'll turn it back to you just to close if I missed anything.
Sorry, Megan, I'll take it. I know we're limited on time, so good afternoon again, everyone. What a great discussion we just heard. Please join me in a virtual round of applause for Bob and Christian. Today has been a great opportunity to learn more about the ignition of One Central and the exciting impact it's going to have on our great city. The new transit hub will become the first gateway to the South Side, connecting the cultural institutions to Bridge, Grant Park, and Millennium Park to McCormick Place and Soldier Field. And as Bob said, the development will unify the cultural mile and the experience. So we hope this session has been valuable to you and your business. And we ask you to keep an eye out on our Executives Club website for more events coming up. There's one tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the marketing forum. They will present a panel discussion on how to spot, prevent, and respond to disinformation. And you can sign up online with www.executivesclub.org. So we hope you have the great rest of the day, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody.